Okay, well, that'll help me a lot as I go forward. So, artificial intelligence and designing the future, because right, we're all here to try to make our world a better place. And I think that's what it comes down to. So I'm going to be talking about why AI is exciting and why it's really can be thought of as the most humanistic of all fields rather than something alien and engineering-like. And yeah, I'm going to kind of try to fight this notion of promise and perils. I think that's selling it short. It's really just a good thing to understand how we work. But nevertheless, there's fear, and we should try to understand that. And it's really all as part of designing the big problem of all of us in all of our societies, how we can make ourselves a better society. And I'm going to talk about, we want to be vibrant, exciting, productive, and we want to be open to new possibilities, and then we want to be resilient, not easily damaged. And just as I walked in, as I took the train over from the other side of the tracks where my company is, I have a company that I work for as well as working at the university, an AI company. I realized I should put something about the non-aggression principle, because that's really maybe a principle for how we design a vibrant, open, and resilient society. So, but let me not try to do it all right here. Let's start with why we should be excited about AI. Why should we be excited about AI? And 3 reasons. Number 1, because understanding the mind, which is what artificial intelligence is about, is a great humanistic endeavor. It's trying to understand ourselves. And it's not just this technological thing. It's not just an ability to create useful tools, but it's about understanding ourselves. And it's also not just a scientific advance. It's not just the way we understand the nature. It's something that's important in the development of life on the planet. Us as a society, as a race, perhaps. And because its impact will be transformational, it's going to really change ourselves, what we try to do, how we work, maybe even what it means to be a person. And yet, so it's really profound and potentially, but it's also a continuation of trends that are many years old. So this is why understanding the mind is the greatest. I didn't even say this. It's the greatest scientific challenge and prize that we're achieving. It would be the greatest achievement of all time. Of all time. So why do I say it's so great? Understanding, it's the greatest instance of understanding ourselves. All humanity, all throughout its history, has tried to understand how it works, understand how the world works, understand our place in the world, and really understanding how it is that we figure out our place in the world. It's a big step, perhaps the single biggest step in that process. So this is the biggest scientific challenge of all time, in my opinion. And I don't think that's really bragging. It's just a fact. It doesn't mean we're going to do it right away. But when it's done, it will be the biggest scientific achievement of all time. Another reason to be excited about it is because it's happening. It's happening now. For some definition of now, the reason it's going to happen now, it's really because of Moore's law, which is this relentless drop in the cost of computing power. I'm sure you've covered that. I'm sure Kim has presented slides like this showing the increase in computer power versus years. This is a little over a century, and this is a log scale of calculations per second per $1,000. And in this graph, it's actually looks like it's bending up, but even if it's a straight line, it's an exponential trend because it's a log graph. And there's every reason to expect this to happen. It has been happening up into the teens with GPUs, and then we can expect this to happen for the foreseeable future. And this really is what's driving progress in AI. And I'll say a little bit about some of those progresses. But we can expect this to happen. And because, like, we don't know exactly when we will understand the mind, but having this computational power makes it possible to do it. And so when will, they've estimated 10 to the 15th might be the amount of computation that's done by a human brain. Maybe we need more than that, maybe we need less than that. Maybe we need more than that to figure it out, and then when we're done, we won't need quite as much. But for some meaningful definition of now, we are going to have enough power to do it soon, and then there will be great pressure, economic pressure to figure out the algorithms and figure out the designs for the agents so that they can do it. We will understand the mind and thus be able to create different kinds of minds. So going back to that, the reason this relentless cost of computer power means it's going to happen now. What does now mean? Now might mean 10 years from now, it might mean 50 years from now. I can't see how it's going to take more than 50 years myself, just because of Moore's law, relentlessly, we'll have, so one way to think about Moore's law is doubling every 18 months. Another way is to think every 5 years we get another order of magnitude. So, in 10 years we'll have 100 times computer power. So every decade we get 100 times increase. And it just quickly becomes overwhelming. Okay, so this is like an explosion because it's exponential, and yet it's sort of slow, right? Every 18 months before we double. Like, how many of you are sitting with your phone and say, I wish my phone had more memory in it, and I have to wait a whole 18 months to get only twice as big of a phone. It's disappointing, okay? So it's an explosion, but it's kind of slow. And I think it will always look like this. Like, even in the midst of everything, we'll be sitting here with our AIs, and even the robots, and we'll be disappointed we have to wait 18 months before we upgrade our robot, and we can think twice as fast, or it has twice as much memory. So it is an explosion in the sense that it's exponential, but it will always feel much the way it does now, sort of slow. But yet insistent and unstoppable. There's no way we could really change the march of technology, even if we wanted to. I don't think we want to. But people want more capable things, and they will always be going to spend money for those. They'll want to augment. Really, we're always augmenting ourselves. You get a phone, it makes you more powerful. You can call your friends. You can run apps on it. You can recognize the speech or translate from one language to another. It's all about increasing the effectiveness of you in your life. So in a sense, making you more powerful and augmenting your intelligence. So there'll be lots of things that happen along the way, applications. The science really has to go farther, but the availability of the hardware has always and will continue to drive the science. Okay, the third reason is it's happening in here. It's happening here in Canada. Actually, it's happening here in Edmonton. I don't know if you, like last year, Canada decided to make a big investment in AI, and it's $125 million. It's sort of split primarily among the 3 cities, Toronto and Montreal and Edmonton. And it's like Montreal and Toronto are kind of the big places for deep learning, and Edmonton is included as a big place for reinforcement learning. Yeah, I know I'm just going to seriously brag now and say Edmonton is the best place in the world to do reinforcement learning research. I think that's kind of true. So I guess I'm going to brag a little bit in the future, a little bit some more. Yeah. Extension of methods like deep learning for the larger problems of AI, then you have reinforcement learning. This is a picture of my group from a while back. My group, it's really, these are 8 professors, it's all of our groups. I was just nominally in charge of it because I was the chair who received the funding to start it up. Started up 15 years ago. Yeah, so it's kind of insightful of the province of Alberta to start investing in machine learning, reinforcement learning. 15 years ago, before it was popular. And because we were early, we were able to get a bunch of really good people. And now we have some momentum. I don't know, I guess Patrick has spoken here. These are guys doing reinforcement learning. I'm not sure any of these other folks have spoken here. Matt Taylor is sort of leading the effort at RBC, or Borealis AI. And all the other ones are sort of regular professors. Me and Michael and Patrick have founded, and now sort of Dale, have founded this satellite lab of DeepMind in Edmonton, across the river. DeepMind, as you probably run into, is the most important AI company in the world, AI research company in the world. We'll have some more about that in a minute. Okay, so I was going to try to introduce myself. As I said, 40 years doing AI, but also psychology and neural networks. And I've been in academia in Alberta, and before that in Massachusetts, where I got my PhD. Corporate Research Lab is GTE Labs, it's another phone company, and AT&T is a phone company, and now I'm at DeepMind. DeepMind is based in London. Edmonton was their first satellite lab. Now they've got satellite labs in Montreal and in Paris. So I wrote the book on reinforcement learning. Actually, I just wrote the second edition, and it's going to be printed this month after 20 years.
It's great. Yay!
Yeah, and it's actually on the web. You can all get it for free in top quality. And yeah, so reinforcement also has links to biology that are really nice. You might know about the dopamine story, which is that the dopamine system works like a reinforcement learning algorithm, and that's sort of a standard view now in biology. Okay, so as I said, it's an exciting time in AI. So look at some of the headline results for the last 7 years. You probably know about Watson from IBM winning the game Jeopardy against the best humans. Deep neural networks have really just totally changed the state of the art in the last 6 years in speech recognition, computer vision, natural language processing, translation. And we've also seen self-driving cars are now widely talked about, and they're on the roads, and it looks like it's happening. DeepMind in 2014 made a splash by learning, having an algorithm that learned to play a whole bunch of Atari games at the human level, and this was really just from pixels. And I want to dwell on this one a little bit. So let me just go to the side. Here are some of those games. This is Space Invaders, and where you're trying to hit the aliens as they come down at you, and Breakout, where you're trying to hit the little ball up to knock those things. If you're lucky, you get behind it, you can get lots of things off. And these are, so I show these 3 games, and there's like 57 games, I think, just to show you how different they are, and yet the same algorithm learned to play all of them. Learn to drive your car, learn to shoot aliens, and learn to play lots of other games, basically by combining reinforcement learning and deep learning. Just a little more on that. Okay, 49 games, diverse games, and the input would be the pixels of the screen image, and the output would be the joystick motion, in which possible direction you might move the joystick, and then those directions again with the button down. And it did this entirely from self-play, just by looking at the score. There's no teachers, it was just play. It isn't even self-play, right? It's like, it's playing against the machine all the time. And this is going to be played better than all previous methods that have been done in these games, have been done on in this domain, and human level for about half the games. But the striking thing is really the statement. The same learning algorithms apply to all 49 games with no human tuning for the game. Did you guys cover this already? You did? Okay, so you know about this. You know about, how about with you guys at U of A, they deep stack, play poker. Cover that? Okay, guys that are homegrown, totally homegrown, solved Hold'em poker, no limit poker. This is in Science Magazine a few years back, and now limit, first limit, they solved limit, and no limit poker, they're just beating the best human players. AlphaGo, covered that. Cover AlphaZero. AlphaZero? AlphaZero is not AlphaGo Zero. Did you do AlphaZero? Just AlphaGo Zero. You're not sure?
I think
But you did do AlphaGo.
I think we just did AlphaGo Zero.
AlphaGo Zero was like the version of AlphaGo that didn't have human knowledge. Okay? So after they did AlphaGo Zero, they did AlphaZero, which was not limited to Go. And they played Go, chess, and Chinese chess. And it was again, the same algorithm. Played all three of these and learned to play better than any program ever before, and also better than all the people. So this is really striking. If you haven't been to the, well, I don't know, if you're a chess player, I'm kind of a chess player, I used to be a chess player. If you know chess, you might find it the way I did, really interesting to go to the web and look at the games by AlphaZero against the best chess program before AlphaZero. And because AlphaZero plays chess very differently than any other computer program, chess playing program. Like typical chess computer play, it's very stodgy, and like they will like get a small advantage and just grind out a win. Whereas this AlphaZero, it like sacrifices pieces for a little positional advantage that somehow ends up always winning. But it's really interesting. Just watch it play. And it's surprising, and it makes sacrifices. It's very creative and just plays unlike a computer you would expect. Okay, so this is why it's sort of exciting. And one way I like to think about it is we're really seeing a second industrial revolution. Like the first industrial revolution was we took the physical power of people and we replaced it by machines. Now we're basically replacing the computational power of people. You know, just pattern recognition, control. And so until now, people have been our cheapest sources of computation, but now our machines are starting to provide greater and cheaper computation. Okay, so that's sort of the big picture. And now I want to go bigger. Okay, so the biggest picture, like the universal picture, and talk about what's happening, because I really think that what's happening is at that scale. So the biggest picture is starts with the Big Bang, right? The universe. The universe started out in the Big Bang, all these particles, and there was nothing. And then gradually it formed stars, and the stars grew larger, and they formed the larger elements, and then they blew up, and things recoalesced again, and eventually forming planets and the heavier elements that were all constructed inside the first generation stars. And so the age of stars, first we had just the age of little tiny little particles. They weren't even molecules other than like helium and hydrogen. And we needed the stars, the age of stars, to form the heavier elements. So the age of stars, just all these stars, and then we have planets, and then eventually we have the origin of life, and then you can identify a number of stages in that thing, in that process of life, and including eventually people and culture and language, agriculture, written language, and now we start to develop technology, and these, I've chosen names for these two stages. Anybody's been thinking this could have been, and I did describe it that way. They'd say this is the age of life, and this is the age of machines. I think that would be a mistake, because as we understand biology better, we really tend to think about biological systems as machines, biological machines. I think all of you doing medicine would just be familiar. This is the way we think about it. Koshi, what was your name?
Koji?
Koji.
Yeah.
You know from studying medicine that we want to think of it as molecules, little machines.
Yeah.
And so, and our computers, as we do AI and we make robots and little toys, they're all more lifelike. And so calling this life and this machine is just not going to work. It may feel good for a moment, but that kind of vision is not the right one. So what is the difference between these machines that are biological and these machines that are technological? I like to think it's because these machines can self-replicate. We don't really know how they work. Like, a virus can make another copy of itself. A person can make another copy of itself. Or a couple people, anyway. But we don't know how people work. We can make them, we don't know how they work. And what's happening in the fourth stage is these things exist first in the minds of some other intelligent system, and then they exist in the world. They may not be able to replicate. So this is the age in which we design things. Design means they're made in someone's head, someone's mind. They're made in a mind, and before they come into existence. So this is I call the age of design. More and more things are going to be designed, whereas here, the self-replicated things mostly are the ones that make up the interesting part of our environment. And what we're seeing now is this transition from the age of replicators to the age where more and more things in our world are designed, like a chair is designed or a building is designed. But still, the majority of things, perhaps, the trees and the forests and the people and the animals are all self-replicated. And those are the things that run the world. It's really human choices that determine what happens. So we're still in the age of replicators, but we are gradually moving to the age of design. So the Industrial Revolution is part of that. The age of design, development of computers and AI, nanotechnology. And so there'll probably be an age after that one, but I don't know what it will be like after you understand minds, which you might call singularity. Okay, so that's the big picture. Now, so you guys should feel free to jump in and remark on things, if you want to correct things, or if I'm not being clear, ask for clarifications. But now I thought I would transition now to a more smaller scale. Let's really be clear what we mean by intelligence. So I'll offer a definition. Intelligence is the computational part of the ability to achieve goals. I like this. I like having a definition, first of all. Some AI professors will just say there is no definition of intelligence. It's just what people do. No, you have to have a definition of what you're working on. So, and this one's fine. Intelligence, the computational part, the ability to achieve goals, it's not like the raw force part. If you have a big crane or something, you would have to be very to achieve your goals, but that's not the computational part. And so it's really centered on the notion of a goal. So there are systems in the world that are well thought of as having goals. This is what intelligence is about. And I say it that way because this idea of intelligence, it's in the eyes of the beholder. It's not in the thing itself. This is subtle, but if you really want to understand what intelligence is, you have to understand that it's not in the thing itself. So if you take something like a thermostat. Is the thermostat intelligent? Well, a thermostat can achieve goals. It's not the heavy lifting part. The heavy lifting part is the furnace, or whatever it is it can control. So the thermostat is really the computational part of the ability to keep your house at a good temperature. That's the goal. But on the other hand, You could also, like, particularly if you were a thermostat repair person, you would understand it not as a goal-seeking system, but as purely as a mechanism. You know, it's just doing this simple thing. There's a spring, and it heats up, and it stretches, and closes a switch, or whatever it is. So maybe the thermostat repairman would say, oh, I understand this mechanism. So I'm contrasting goal perspective, goal language, with mechanism language. If you have a system that you think about it primarily in terms of mechanisms, then you're not thinking of it as having a mind, as having a goal, as having intelligence. But if it's useful for you to think about it as in terms of its outcomes, that it's guaranteeing perhaps the same outcome no matter what happens, then you're using intelligence language, mind language, and so this is a question of degree. It's not like it's intelligent or it's not intelligent. It's like the thermostat's a little bit intelligent. Maybe AlphaGo is more intelligent because you can't think about AlphaGo in terms of mechanisms. It's really complicated. Like if you were to play against AlphaGo, how would you understand it? You would understand it that whatever move you made, it ends up beating you. Okay, that's the outcome. You don't think about it in terms of how it works inside. It's too complicated. On the other hand, maybe if you wrote AlphaGo, maybe you would understand it well enough that you could actually understand it better by understanding how it works. Probably not AlphaGo, but a simple chess program that only looks a short distance into the future. By that understanding, you might be able to understand. You might be able to make moves that defeat it, or at least understand why it makes the mistakes and moves that it does make. So it depends upon, it's a matter of degree, depends on you, what you know. Nevertheless, it's not wrong to use binary words like it's intelligent or not intelligent. And I guess the final point is that this is, you know, I've said it's just a matter of point of view, but that doesn't mean it's like really, it's not. This doesn't mean it's not really important. It is really important. The fact that there are things that it's useful for us to think about them as having goals is really important fact. Like animals, you look at an animal and they are a phenomenon, but there are things out there that like gather food and protect themselves, and we want to use the goal language for animals and for people. And I'd like to dwell on this a little bit longer. What are some other things that are just an appearance, that are just a perception, and yet are really important? If you think about, your computer has, a desktop metaphor. You have files that sit on the desktop, and you move them around, you put them in the trash, and so on. Well, that's all an illusion, right? Really, there's just some big bits in there, and they're not on any desktop. They're not in any place. But this illusion, this metaphor, is really helpful to you, because then it's helpful because you have a pretty good guess about what to do. Like to get your file back, you rummage around in the trash, or you can collect them into a folder. Okay, all these ideas are helpful to you because you can use them to predict what will happen and to know what to do. Other imaginary things that are really useful to you are like you read a novel, or you watch a movie, and the characters in the movie, they're all imaginary. You do understand, of course, they're all imaginary. They're just reading a script. But nevertheless, it helps you, the illusion helps you to predict what will happen next. I don't know, if you look at Harry Potter is a stand-up guy, and he doesn't kill people. He lives up to his word, and you can pretty much tell. It's quite important when you see characters in fiction that they have some consistency and they behave in a recognizable way. And yet that is all an illusion, and yet we look at them and we say, well, he's acting out of character. Like that was a bad episode of the TV show because they made that guy act out of character. It's not true to his character. Well, the character is just made up. And yet, it is important. There is an important sense that they do what's appropriate for them. And it helps you understand what's happening, it helps you understand what will happen. There's lots and lots of things that are illusions, which are very important. And let me do another one. How about university? University doesn't really exist, right? There's people, there's buildings, there's books, there's all sorts of things that are real. University, there is no physical university thing. And yet it's a really good abstraction. It's a really good, you think about the goals of the university. You think the university wants to train up smart young people. Or maybe you think the university just wants to save money, You can think about the university as having goals. You can think about the university as existing, and it's quite useful. Or your soccer team, it's just a collection of people. But thinking about it as a team helps for lots of purposes. Okay, that's probably longer than you wanted me to talk about. But let me show you an instance of a system that when you look at it, you'll say, oh, it seems to have a goal. And it's just a simple maze system. We have our little agent who's running around in this maze, this grid world, moving from square to square. There's a start place and there's a goal place. When it gets to the goal, it learns and it's plotting out a path. Those arrows show the direction that it thinks is the right move to make, the right action to make. And you can see it's learning. Now, what's its life like? Well, each one of these cells has a number on it. And when it arrives here, I tell them you're in cell 54, and then you do action 2, and you end up in cell 69. Okay? Or if you tried the action up, you would have stayed in cell 54. So its life as it learns the connection, the topology between the cells and its actions. And so it does generally learn what's the right action to make. It also learns about the topology. And so now it learned how to get there, and then I picked it up and moved the goal to another place. When it finally stumbles on the goal, it has to actually stumble on it the first time, and then plots how to get there quickly. So it is quite useful to think about it having a goal, and like if someone picks it up and moves it, think of it, it doesn't know that the goal is there. It has to find out, so it went there and the goal is absent. Though the colors represent how good it thinks it is to be in a cell. So it had thought these were all good, and now it's learning that, there's no goal there, and so it's disappointed, and its predictions will gradually fall down towards 0, as you see now as they get less green. Again, it has to stumble on reaching the goal, and gets a +1 reward, and then it can plot a path to the goal quickly. Boom, boom, boom. And now it's got most of it. Okay, so I think we're tempted to think of it as trying to get to a goal, and having actions and having perceptions. And we'll do it one more time. And now I can describe it as getting there and being disappointed that there is no reward, and then learning the path to get there. And so now we can go in and mess with it a bit. I guess I have been messing with it, but let's change the world and find its way around new obstacles, because it quickly learns that no longer works to go down. And then we can make it even harder. Or harder. So looking for the goal. Those places just get lighter and lighter. So, what do you think? Do you feel a little sorry for the guy? You do, Lucy? Yeah. So you're thinking about it as having a goal, as trying to achieve something and being frustrated. So that's all an appearance that you're getting out of just by watching its behavior, trying to predict its behavior. Okay. So I've talked about, now, this might be a little bit redundant. I've talked about, coming to understand the principles of intelligence. What we'll have to do, create and design human beings as intelligent themselves. How's this a big goal, really, for all of humanity. And ultimately would lead to be creation of beings or ourselves becoming things that are much more powerful than our current selves. And as I'm sure you've talked about, folks are somewhat scared about this happening. And so their concerns, I think, are not well expressed. They're not clearly articulated by these folks. Even Guy Bostrom is widely attributed with having written them up well. But when I read his book, I go to a key step in the argument. I just feel that doesn't actually make the argument. He just kind of hints at it, but doesn't make it so that I almost can't argue with him because he doesn't make the argument. And so I consider this to be fear-mongering, but there's a good way to be fear-mongering, because fear-mongering, it's good because it gets your attention. So it's good, we should all be thinking about the arrival of AI, but I don't think we should be fearful, because that doesn't help us think clearly. Okay, so let's just cut to the chase, and let me figure out where you guys are, find out where you guys are on your thoughts on this question of what to think about the coming of AI. And so there are like four, I identified four metaphors. So I want you all to pick one of these four, okay? Number one, AI is coming, but it's just another round of technology, meh. Or, yikes, it's the end of humanity. Wow, it could be the next step for humanity. Or, it could be quite complex and diverse. Not sure what will happen. Okay? So, and of course several of these may happen. And so, how many go for number one? How many go for number two? How many go for number three? And how many go for number four? Okay, I think everyone raised their hand. So that's really good participation. Okay. Okay, so, yeah, as I said before, it will always seem slow. So there will be time to think about it. And I think I've said that understanding the mind is surely good, because that's what people are, things that understand themselves and the world and understand their minds. It must surely be good. But it will bring, just the fact that we understand the mind, we understand how we work, it will bring radical change. And like some people will improve themselves, some people will design improved people. Thus, ordinary people will become little importance, relatively. And I say perhaps extinct, if that is as it should be. It's kind of, it may seem harsh, but prior animals became extinct. The Neanderthals became extinct. It's only if it's as it should be become extinct. We'd have to really be not only useless, but we'd have to be in the way of progress. I don't see that happening. But if that's the way it should be, if we're just in the way and useless, I don't think we should feel that we have the absolute right to always be in the world, much less in charge of the world. This is the kind of question I want us to think about. So I want to just reject entitlement the sense that you're entitled to a job, you're entitled to a comfortable life. You know, all of the animals need to compete with each other or cooperate with each other, and you know, an animal that no longer can cut it will no longer become the top animal. Okay, so these questions you often see in the news, I think, are coming from the sense of entitlement. How do we keep from becoming obsolete? Like we can't allow that to happen. How do you make sure that we all have jobs, or that we're all respected or taken care of? Like universal basic income is saying, I should always just be taken care of, even if I don't contribute to the society. And that is, I think, by definition, a sense of entitlement. And can we, does that obey the golden rule? Like if all the animals, including like the bacteria and the rodents, all had a sense of entitlement, and they should, you know, the golden rule means a symmetrical rule for all the participants. So entitlement is often used to avoid thinking about or preparing for change, or to motivate non-productive things. A better way to think about it, now these are I'm not really trying to convince you as much as get these things on the table. I like to think about man-machine symmetry, or human-machine symmetry, that you can often think of people and AIs as similar. I mean, right now our machines are not very similar to people, but there's no reason why they won't eventually be similar. They'll both have goals which may conflict or be compatible. And so, you know, if you look at, like, there's another kind of people, which is the AIs. Shouldn't they be also have rights? And or should we should not feel entitled because we were first, or even because we made them, that we should always dominate them as if they were slaves. Okay, so I think we have to give up the idea that our narrower goals have broad and long applicability. So if you just want some particular thing, like you want to be able to, I don't know, watch TV or even whatever you want, that if they may not have long-lived applicability. You may need to be open-minded, more open generally about the future, one of the goals. And you know, recognize that our influence is imperfect. Like, why would we expect to be able to run the world forever just the way we are now? That's really an arrogant and aggressive thing to say, that I'm going to make a decision that will determine how the universe will evolve forever. Okay, so I'll share some more of my thoughts. AI, I think, will bring great change, but not necessarily great risk. Yeah, unless you want to call change risk by itself. But we have to separate them apart because these are really important things, and so we have to be nuanced. Change and risk, not the same thing. I think these risks that people are talking about exist anyway. Like risks, the machines will take over. Well, they're the risks that people will take over. That one group of people will dominate another. Right now it's the U.S. that is having the greatest impact on the world and has military activities throughout the globe. So I think there's a risk if I wasn't so much in the West. Actually, I'm no longer an American citizen, but you know, I think there's a good chance they might dominate. Actually, I think they're going to fade away, but we do have the same problem, that we're just among people, that some can dominate others, and we have to have that struggle as we try to design the world that we want. Okay, so intelligence augmentation. That's IA instead of AI. Intelligence augmentation. That's where we use the knowledge of how the mind works to enhance ourselves. That's what we actually are doing. We actually make assistants, user interfaces, rather than independent machines. And although those will come about if we don't destroy ourselves first, probably within our lifetimes, and then in the long run, this will be somewhat disruptive, or it'll be part of what disrupts social structures, power structures, and we'll have to re-examine what we think about what's good and how a society should be organized. These are things that are thousands of years old, these trends and these challenges. And this is really, this is the grand challenge of all of our lives and our societies. Like, how should we organize ourselves? And to what purpose should we organize ourselves? It's a fundamental problem. AI are part of it, but they don't create it. It would be happening anyway. So when I say that AI is the most human-centric of all fields, it's because it's all about us and understanding us and making us and augmenting us. It's really all about us. And I have to say not exactly us, because when we make AIs, they aren't exactly people. They may not have exactly the same goals, not the same limbs, not the same limbic system, not the same hypothalamus, not the same, exactly the same turns. They may not even need water, for example. Okay, they're not the same, but I think they are essential, and the most essential part of us, which is the computational part of achieving goals. And so it's really, we're trying to understand that. It's this, and don't think of it as this techie, alien, artificial thing. You know, when we say artificial intelligence, that makes it seem as alien and artificial. But it's really just intelligence. We're trying to understand what intelligence means. And really the name is kind of a misnomer. It's inappropriate. It puts us in the wrong connotation to think of it as artificial. We're just studying intelligence. And think about it more, I think we make it out to be artificial and alien. You know, we talk about the robots taking over. We don't really talk about the next generation of designed people taking over. And even, you know, taking over, why would they take over? Why we are projecting onto them? Okay, I'd rather we think about it as the next step in this evolving, ever-changing, and yet recurring themes involved in ourselves and humankind, and we have to find a way maybe to live with each other and towards some goal. And what would that goal be? Well, I think I gave it away at the very beginning. We would like a society that is vibrant, open, and resilient. Let me say a little bit more about the challenge of the other. The challenge of the other, you know, we think of the robots as being other than us, and this is something that happens all the time. Just like throughout history, people have met other groups of people. Like we meet, the East and West meet, and they collide, the Aboriginals with the newcomers, and then there's some kind of accommodation made, and maybe often one is wiped out. In the short term or the long term, like, do you kill the other? Do you subjugate the other? Do you trade with them, share with them, intermarry with them, merge with them? Neanderthals, I'm not sure which one we did. Did we kill all the Neanderthals? Well, there's actually probably more Neanderthal DNA in the world today than there was when there were Neanderthals, because like in Europeans, between 1% and 4% of DNA is Neanderthal DNA. There's a lot of it around, so maybe we intermarried with them, and in a sense, you know, from the point of view of the gene, they can be happy because their genes have lived on and multiplied, even though Neanderthals maybe have died out. Okay, so do you conquer or do you collaborate? And what should we try to do is this old story, perhaps as old as life itself. And I think about the first cells. Do they compete or do they cooperate? Eventually they form multicellular creatures, or they take mitochondria and include them in their own being. Is it a takeover, or is it a success for the mitochondria? Now they're in every cell, in every animal. So we know all this. This is our history. It's the challenge of the other and how you deal with it. And the coming of AI is like a new chapter in this old story. If aliens were to invade, it would be another chapter in this old story of how different peoples, different intelligences treat each other. And in this regard, I think the long-term goal should always be cooperation, not domination. Maybe always a little bit too strong. So you shouldn't try to control the other, you should try to evolve with it, take advantage of the other. But this is a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing for two people because they're scared of each other. Hard thing to succeed, be cooperative, to trade. Each can do what they're good at. They can each have their way. Really, cooperation is rational. You get the most stuff if you cooperate, but it's hard for us to do. If you notice, it's hard for us to cooperate with animals. It's hard for animals are not good at cooperating by and large. They can't, for example, trade goods. They don't have the humans. Only humans. It's like the amazing human superpowers that we can cooperate. We can trade. We can give up something that we value in exchange for getting something else. There's no other animal that can do that. And so it may be our greatest superpower, that we were able to cooperate with each other, with different people. And I'm almost done, so I'm going to hold off on your question. Diversity is the other way around. You celebrate diversity. Like we do here in Canada. We celebrate having different kinds of people, taking benefit. Everyone can benefit from what each culture has developed, and we're richer because of it. And even if you have a wide diversity of intelligence, some super intelligent, some people, and then some animals, we could, or we can hope to, design a society where everyone's rights are respected based on non-aggression principles of voluntary cooperation. We'll still need things like private property, and we can cooperate all the way down to people. And so this is what we want. The subtitle of my talk is Designing the Future. So how would we, it'd be cool if we could talk about this. And I think I just got, maybe this is my last slide or two. This idea of a vibrant, open, resilient society. We want a society that doesn't get stagnant. A totalitarian society might be resilient, but it wouldn't be very open. And because you're not open, you're not going to be exciting and productive and producing new things. If you're not being exciting and producing new things, then you're going to be less successful, I would think, than a society which is open to new ideas. And so we want all of these things. But one part of open is that we should allow many different cultures within our broader society, because it's that variety which allows them to figure out what's the best way to be, or what are better ways to be within a collection of different ways to be. So you want a diversity of different designs. They would compete, and they should cooperate, and they should have, as I said, the overlapping circles of empathy, so they support each other, and yet without entitlement. Entitlement would say, well, I am a so-and-so, and there are no other, my religion is the best, and I do not allow any other religions, as opposed to allowing a multiplicity. So, absolutely we should care the design that we're working toward does well, but not insist on it. And maybe the rise of greater foresight, which maybe what intelligence, important part of what we mean by intelligence, it's maybe one of the few things that's probably generally good. Okay, so I think I am done. So what we've talked about is why AI is exciting, why it's really a very humanistic thing rather than an artificial thing. And I've tried to argue that understanding mind is just a good, it's not really a trade of promise and perils. There are promises and perils in the world, but understanding mind is promise, and it isn't really adding any new perils. Even though we fear it, but we're really just fearing the AIs as an other, a powerful other. And it directs us back to the real problem that we all face, which is how we can design our society to be vibrant, open, and resilient. And the way to do that, I think, is based on voluntary relationships. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we already have one question queued up.
Yep.
I was going to ask about cooperation.
Yeah.
It seems to me there's definitely a link between the rise of cooperation and the existence of language.
Yeah.
Language
Yeah.
is what enables us to share a concept of the future with the other, which I think is necessary to lower fears. And I think now there are probably intelligent or somewhat intelligent beings that manage to cooperate without language through a series of trial and error. But
Well, if you've ever gone to a foreign country where you don't speak the language, you know, you can still buy things. But it is much more difficult
Yeah.
to do the advanced forms of cooperation.
But
You need language. Language is extremely important.
yeah, I mean language and what it represents, which is communication, understanding that can hopefully overcome fear. But I think my question to you is, when we talk about intelligence and the idea of, you know, how good can it get? Do you think of wisdom as being synonymous, or is superintelligence not necessarily wise?
Well, so I'm not sure you were here when I gave my definition of intelligence as just the computational part of the ability to achieve goals. It's a fairly generic definition. And wisdom, I would almost want to identify with the idea of foresight, being able to see what are the long-term consequences of what we might do. So a wise choice is one that's not only going to win or do okay in the short term, but in the long term is going to work out well. So foresight would identify with wisdom. And it's a really important part of the design of modern AIs, is to be able to see farther into the future. So like AlphaGo, an important component is, perhaps one of the most important components, is it learns to be able to look at a board position, a Go position, and guess what are its probability of winning. Okay, and if you can do that really well, you can say, oh, if that stone was here, that stone there, it's slightly better for me. Then you can play. It's a really important part of playing really well. Having the wisdom to make a judgment about a position is going to be good in the long term. Yeah. And so it's part of our societies are about encoding that kind of wisdom. Like, it's not going to be good to do such and such, whether it's steal from people or be impolite to people or to eat cloven-hooved animals, which is, I think, has to do with the various diseases that you might get if you eat them. Those are all like culturally figured out guesses at what's going to be good in the long run for the people and the societies. I think wisdom is foresight.
And maybe something else? Empathy?
What is it? I think empathy is, I think what what I'm saying is that if realizing that what's bad for another person is also going to be bad for you is is an example of a very far-seeing thing. You know, okay, I can steal from him, and that would be good for me. But it's not. If you're really wise, you realize that if you steal stuff, it's not going to be good for you. Not really be good for you in the long term. There's a lot of our values that are expressed just as values, I think, are really predictions about what's going to be good in the long run for the individual or for the society. And a lot of our strictures and our rules are ways of making things that are good for society also good for the individual. Like, we have laws against stealing and killing. That's a way of making it really plain to the individual that it's also bad for you to steal and kill, because the society gangs up on you. Yeah, values. What I mean by values are like encoded predictions about how well it's going to work out.
So, if you're talking about technology with groups of people in 2018, you find that the most widely read author is Yuval Noah Harari. And so there's Sapiens in 2013 and Homo Deus in 2014 and 21 Lessons for the 21st Century in 2018. And suddenly he's giving interviews at a very fast rate. He's very popular on talk shows and so on.
And all over YouTube.
Yes, and what's fascinating is that his vantage point is changing, and I have no idea whether, any of us criticizing him are influencing that, but let's talk about a few things. Let's talk about humans getting stuck because every novel, every TV program, every movie revolves around human decision making. We face a future where machines will be making decisions better than we are. So that will wreck every plot line. So human art, human culture is over because... So that's what he actually said, and he gave no alternative, no plan B. It seems to me that's an impossible outcome. That is not going to happen. Humans are not just going to sit back and let our culture grind to a halt. If you think of a world in which machines really are capable of better decision making than humans 100% of the time, that's a world where machines have achieved amazing things. And that includes both improving their intellect and potentially ours if we have. So what are we going to use all that intellect for? When you wake up in the morning, you think of the things you want, you can never have, the things you want to do, you can never do. That could be gone because you could lead several lives. Name it, 5 lives, 100 lives, 1,000 lives. The thing that limits us now is we get mixed up. If you try to have a multi-threaded life where there's somebody representing you, doing things on your behalf, and at the end of the day, get together and share, experiences, we don't have the, intellect not to get mixed up. But we could in the future. And think of how much richer than human culture today that would be. If you could honestly do anything or have anything that you wish through virtual reality, you could share it with friends and so on, that would be way better. So that when he says that, we're going to get stuck. So the next interview, so he says we're going to get stuck. I go on YouTube and I'm complaining. How can this possibly be true? And the next interview, he basically says everything's negotiable except the fact that you have to get to know yourself better. So he spends 2 hours every day meditating. And he recommends that for all of us. Think of how you would carve out those 2 hours, all of you. It would be tough, right? That's what he recommends. And that the individual human is so powerless. You have to realize how powerless you are. You have to join an organization to have any impact. And I think that's so disappointing. Why did you go to school then if individuals can no longer make a difference? Then why are you here? Why aren't you just home in your parents' basement or something, you know? The act of going to school suggests that you think that individuals can do stuff that make a difference. He's saying, no, you shouldn't think that. You should join an organization. And I predict that his next interview, he'll be on a new track. So it's very, very interesting to look at his changing interview performance as, these flawed ideas come about. But do you think, Rich, that we all need to know ourselves better? Is a problem in the world not just knowing how the brain works or how humans work, but how we ourselves? Should we be spending more time being focused on ourselves? It seems to me intrinsically that's a bad idea. Computers can play games against themselves and that sort of thing, and that works. But humans are not really like that. We're pretty limited. If we spend a lot of time just rechurning our own thoughts without any input from the outside, it seems to me, I would define that as wasted time. So am I wrong about that? Should I start meditating 2 hours a day for the rest of my life? And do I need to join an organization to have any impact on the future?
Those are all big questions. It could go all the different ways.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to distinguish between knowing yourself as like knowing how people work. I think we're going to know how people can be intelligent, how they can achieve goals, how they can model the world and understand the world. These are general principles. What we won't fully understand, or what would be different than that, would be all the peculiarities of people. People have phobias for snakes, and they have a particular layout to their wiring of their brain. And so a lot of those are sort of, I just want to distinguish between those that are sort of incidental to the niche and the way we grew up in and we were evolved in, from the principles of mind and goal-seeking abilities. So I expect that AI, that the science of AI will achieve strong AI, will achieve the ability to find goals, to achieve goals in a fairly general sense, long before we understand all about the details of human nature. So well, I'm not making a judgment that one of those is more interesting than the other. I think they're both interesting, but they're different.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gotten a lot, I think, insight into my own workings by thinking myself in terms of AI algorithms, goal-seeking algorithms. But there's all sorts of myself that are just seen independent of that, separate from that. And meditation, should we all meditate? Well, it's good to think hard. It's the same thing. It's similar. You sit there thinking about how you work. Maybe that's meditation. I don't think it is. I haven't yet gotten into the joys of meditation or yoga. So I wouldn't just write it off. But I like the idea of understanding how you work.
Mm-hmm.
I think about AlphaGo. AlphaGo is the combination of search through many possibilities and have this ability to just intuitively look at a position and say, who's ahead? It's really the combination of those two simple things that gives its ability. Search the possibilities, and at the end, at a certain depth, it says, who's ahead? Backs that up, figures out what to do. So similarly, like we decide, well, I like Ethiopian food, but I also like so-and-so, and so where should we go for dinner tonight? You plan out the possibilities, you make a quick judgment, what would be fun, what will not be fun.
I just have a quick question on your Moore's law.
Yeah.
So like I've heard arguments where like Moore's law is like slowing down and stuff. Have you heard that?
Yes. Yes.
So what's your thoughts on that?
So technically it's true, but because Moore's law is technically about the doubling of the number of transistors on a chip, and so that reaches a limit, has reached a limit. But this larger Moore's law, maybe it should be named something else, of that one way or another, computational power per dollar always goes down. That seems to be much more no longer there. So really, Moore's law proper is only a small, like a 30-year segment of the 120 years, which we can expect.
And also, so you describe like intelligence from mechanistic versus computational, right? That's the gradient.
Mechanistic versus, if you describe a system in terms of its mechanisms, then you're not thinking of it as intelligent. If you describe it in terms of outcomes, then you're thinking of it in terms of intelligence and goals.
So everything can
Mechanism versus outcome is the dichotomy I'm trying to draw.
But everything can be described in that. Like those.
Everything can be described mechanistically. Like you could just you can describe this room with the table and the chairs and the people. That's got to be describable in terms of the laws of physics, but it's not necessarily the most useful level at which to describe it. It's more useful to talk about the chairs and tables and the people. I have a philosophy that I call multiple perspectivism, and its main tenet is that the same phenomena, there are multiple useful perspectives you can take on it. So one perspective is atoms and physics, another perspective might be people and objects, and they're both valid in that many philosophical conundrums come out of a system that has to either be material or purposive, or to have a mind. But really, you want to have multiple perspectives on the same thing.
So like even for like alpha go 0 or something, right? Mechanistically, it was just a whole amount of transistors doing stuff, right? So intelligence is almost like predictable, right? Like if you give it an input, you can't calculate it, but for sure it's going to give only one output.
In terms of the outcomes,
Outcome, yeah.
it's predictable.
Yeah.
And that's why we say it's intelligent.
So intelligence is like predictability.
Predictable at the level of outcomes,
Okay.
as opposed to predictable at the level of mechanisms.
Okay.
So, to understand something is to be able to predict and control it. Prediction and control are like core operations. So that's what we all do in our lives. We encounter our data stream, and we try to predict and control it. And if we do, to the extent that we do, we say we understand it. I understand this chess program, because I can predict and control it. And if I'm predicting and controlling at the level of outcomes, then I'm treating it as a mind, as opposed to a not mind. Lucy, did you have a question?
I'm just thinking like, can even be, what is even intelligence then? Like, if it's already predetermined, if those transitions were in that, like state, then like, if I put in an input, I guaranteed know what the output will be. You know what I'm saying? If all the transistors, even my neurons in my brain, right? Just action potentials reacting to what I'm seeing right now. But that specific permutation arrangement guarantees that I will think these thoughts because those were their initial states, right?
Yeah, so the deal is that even though it is, as you say, predetermined, assuming it is all deterministic, it's very difficult and effectively impossible for you to predict how it will behave. Even though it is determined, the only way to find out what it is to wait and see what it is.
I see.
And that's why we can have notions of choice and sense.
I see. It's just because we can't predict it, but technically it's all like predetermined.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, that's pretty cool.
yeah. So these 2 points of view, one is that, oh, it's all predetermined, it's all follows from the physical laws, rolling themselves out. And the other view is that, oh, there's an intelligent agent there that makes a choice. These 2 points of view appear to be incompatible with each other, but really they're not. So think of random number generator. If you're programmed, you know you can generate random numbers all the time. But in fact, the random numbers are actually deterministic. And if you knew the state of the random number generator, it's totally determined. But you can't predict, because it would be cryptographically hard to predict what the numbers would be. And so, because you can't, and it is useful, all I'm going to conclude is that it's useful for you to think of it as if it's random.
The multiple perspectivism, if you apply that to kind of like society purpose and human purpose, people are saying that the use of technology we should focus on is human flourishing, that's like a good goal. And probably at the individual level, well-being is the same as human flourishing. If you have a whole bunch of human beings who have well-being, then that is human flourishing, assuming that there's not conflict. Do those seem like good goals to you? Does that phrase human flourishing mean anything to you? I'm sure you've heard it. Is it meaningful or not?
So, what do we mean by human flourishing? Do we mean they're all healthy and happy and living their lives? Or is it, but they could also be stuck, not advancing.
Yeah.
And we all have to look for something maybe outside of humanity as it is now. So I've tried to argue that we need a vibrant, open, and resilient society, which means it's not just stuck, the same number of people doing the same things, but being healthy and happy. I don't think that's enough for, because I don't think the universe is going to be content with that.
Yes.
For example, if there was one country that did that, another country which did something different, one would gradually lose out.
Just thinking of your first option, that maybe it's just another type of technology like any other. When I imagine big technologies, say the world of nuclear power, nuclear fission or fusion, the world of space travel. So over the last 50, 75 years, those all take place among certain elites and certain institutions. Don't really have that much to do with the bulk of humanity. Is it possible that the AI advances will take place completely in a little bubble and not end up affecting the masses?
I think it's an interesting question. But it feels like it's not possible because they're rapidly coming out in all our devices. Every new operating system will categorize your photos for you, and you'll have an assistant which can respond to your voice. It seems like it's really coming out to just ordinary people's lives to make them more effective. And I think it feels like the economics will continue that way. Like if we can recommend to you a different movie to watch and be spot on, all these things are economically important. In some sense, like space travel is not economically important. It's just some rich guys spending their money, to do what they interest them. But it doesn't have a cycle back. It's not returning value to the producers of these spacecrafts.
So there's a lot of leapfrogging, right? There are societies where they've never had landline phones, or they of course don't need them, and they'll never know what they are, right? And probably there are all sorts of other things that they've left out that are very important parts of our history, but have been superseded by other things that are better. So, talk about Harari all the time, but he doesn't have a cell phone, smartphone, and he points to that this is the way he stays healthy. But the other thing he would point out about what we're doing now, like obtaining a video feed of somebody, you can analyze the video to tell you all sorts of things that we cannot actually determine with our own eyes. Like you can get my pulse rate from the changing redness of the facial features in the video and see how your behavior affects my pulse rate and all sorts of things like that. It will get better and better at that. Even decision making where we think we're being deliberate, the video feed can prove that we already knew what we were going to, decide a lot before we seemed to, consider and then finally decided something. So I think not having a cell phone when you could have it is sort of a, cop-out, it seems to me, probably. Maybe you can't say that for an individual, but cell phones are such an important part of human society today that you're sort of cutting yourself out of the wills somehow by not having one, I think. And as you say, it's an extension of our humanness. They're very human things. They're our a favorite appendage for the 2018 year at least.
Still experimental.
I guess so. But like more and more young people realize that they haven't made an audio phone call on their cell phone for a very long time to another human being. They've called an automated attendant to get something done, but it's really lame and people laugh at you if you actually use your cell